If scientists can create a rabbit that glows in the dark, is this a good thing? If they can help the environment by mixing the genes of different species, would that be right? And if they can make a chicken that grows without feathers, is this going too far? Since time began, evolution has produced weird and wonderful creatures. Now man can do the same. Science has allowed us to unlock the secrets of life itself. So are we, as some believe, on the verge of a terrible nightmare in a world gone mad? Or could genetic engineering be a force for good, to help create a world where nobody goes hungry?
Thank you very much.
Where our bodies regenerate? This is not tomorrow's world. It's happening now. If all the plants and animals that have been created by science were gathered together on one farm, then this is what it would look like. The farm is imaginary, but all the plants and creatures you're about to see are real. Welcome to our animal farm. We've placed 2 people on our farm to guide us around. Scientist Olivia Judson is a strong supporter of genetic engineering and wants to persuade you that it really can improve the world.
I'm a biologist. I spend my time learning about animals, plants, fungi, bacteria. I find genetic engineering amazing. It's a new frontier of science that has the possibility of transforming all of our lives. For me, genetic engineering isn't so much frightening as inspiring. It opens up a world of wonder.
Food journalist Giles Coren is a passionate advocate for organic farming. He finds what's being done in the name of science a real cause for concern.
As a food writer, I spend a lot of my time seeking out the best natural food that I can. Organically grown fruit and vegetables, free-range meat and eggs. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to feeding the planet, nature has made a pretty good job of it. So when I hear about the brave new world of genetic engineering and the franken food that it produces, it strikes me as completely pointless. And to be honest, very scary.
Olivia Judson and Giles Coren are about to see some plants and animals that are truly beyond belief. Are these modern-day Frankenstein's monsters? Or could they transform our lives and the world for the better? For them and us, it's time to decide. Giles's tour around our farm begins in the cowsheds. He's going to meet some extraordinary creatures, the Schwarzeneggers of the cow world. In the cowshed, the man in charge of the beef herd is Patrice Lobe.
He's a big fellow. Am I all right?
He's quite big, huh? He's 160 meter tall, yeah.
If I saw a man like that, but I wouldn't get this close to him, I don't think. I would think he was on steroids or something. I think he was a bodybuilder.
It is 100% natural, whereby, let's say, within so many generations, all breeders have taken the best of the best, or the more muscle of the more muscle. We moved from a normal classical type of animal, and then we select that sort of animal based on the double muscle.
And when you say double muscles, do you mean it has 2 of every muscle?
No.
Because it looks like it does.
Absolutely.
Almost,
it has
it?
exactly the same type of muscle than any other breed, except that, in terms of quantity, each of these muscles is by far more developed.
Right. This cow is technically known as a Belgian Blue. and it's the product of selective breeding.
Selective breeding is the first stop on our tour of how man is using science to control nature. It's used by farmers to enhance desirable characteristics in their animals. In fact, selective breeding is all about managing sex. To create these Belgian blues, over 100 years, farmers have only allowed the cows and bulls with the greatest muscle mass to mate. And the result is a bull that weighs over a ton. The animal's breeders are keen to show off the results of their hard work. The bulls are shaved to best display their muscles.
What they try to do is to clip the animals in order to highlight all the muscle. You see?
Well, so you can see where all the meat is. That's going to be.
Exactly.
But even here, where they've sort of trimmed in there.
Yeah, to highlight that muscle, which has got a high value. You see?
And these are all going to be lean cuts, and they're all for quick cooking, are they?
That's right.
Because when you look at this, you can't help thinking of lunch, you know? Is it healthy?
The animal, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, the animal is as healthy as another intensive producing animal.
So this is about the most technological that meat can get?
Not the most technological. In terms of technology, we talk about selection, natural selection, having achieved that.
So what is the science behind the Belgian blues? There is a gene that regulates the growth of muscles in cattle. These cows have been selectively bred from animals that contain a copy of this gene which doesn't work. As a result, their muscles grow far larger than normal. To ensure that defective gene is passed on, sex for the Belgian blues has been replaced by technology in the form of artificial insemination.
He is basically a sperm machine.
He is a sperm machine, absolutely.
It's very early in the morning for...
I understand.
The semen is now collected, it's in the artificial vagina, and from there we will process the semen in order to be able to process artificial insemination on the cow.
So precise is the technology involved, they can analyse the semen sperm by sperm to choose the ones they want. So this is testing the sperm count?
That's a sperm analyzer. It's now checking, let's say, the quality of the sperm we have been collecting this morning. Green is good because you see that they are very, very mobile and they are looking forward to move towards the eggs.
And these are not especially muscly sperm?
Don't you find that they are very muscled?
Well, they look impressive to me, but I've never seen any other bull sperm. They're not.
Visually, you won't see any difference. There is no way to find any difference between the bovine, the equine, and the other species, no.
Right. Well, I found the whole experience deeply disturbing. They call it natural selection, but it's been designed by men to exploit animals for their own ends.
Whilst to Giles, this seems shocking and unnatural. Scientist Olivia Judson has a very different view of what's natural in the first place.
It's always fascinated me that what we think of as natural is often anything but. Take this farmhouse treasure trove, the classic image of nature's bounty. But nothing on this table is simply the product of natural evolution. We've been genetically manipulating fruit and vegetables for thousands of years. Take the carrot. Crisp, juicy, orange. But until about 300 years ago, carrots usually looked like this, white. The Dutch selectively bred orange carrots as a tribute to their royal family, the House of Orange. The pink grapefruit we eat are all clones of one original mutant grapefruit. We've forgotten that the potato was originally poisonous. The wheat was once just a scrawny, wild grass. Farmers have been interfering with nature for thousands of years.
And on our farm, they are still at it. Next, Olivia is about to meet a new kind of chicken, which may come as a bit of a surprise.
These chickens may look normal, but they've been bred to grow as fat and as fast as possible. Greedy chickens have heart rates as high as 300 beats a minute. They have a high metabolism and find it difficult to cool down.
In charge of solving the problem of overheated chickens is geneticist Dr. Avigdor Kahana.
As long as they are kept in cool environment, this is not a problem at all because this heat is dissipated through the legs, through the face, and that's sufficient. However, once the progeny of these birds are reared in the tropics in hot conditions, because the gradient in temperature between the body temperature and the ambience is so small, they can hardly dissipate the heat.
So it's as if I go to the tropics wearing a fur coat.
That's right.
And I just can't get cool enough.
That's right. Since I'm a geneticist, I was looking for a genetic solution. That means instead of cooling the environment of chickens with feathers, is helping them feel cool by just removing the feathers. So I decided to go to the extreme situation of developing broilers without feathers at all.
Can we have a look?
Sure, let's go.
All right. Chickens without the gene to make feathers. I'm fascinated to see what they look like. God, it's hot in here.
Yeah, it is hot.
And here they are, the featherless chickens. They look like miniature dinosaurs.
What we have here is that's the original mutant. This is a female.
She's amazingly smooth.
Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary.
This is the male.
So
And as you can see, no scales on the feet.
Right.
That's why the mutation is called scaleless.
They've got little claws on the ends of their wings. You can certainly imagine them as little miniature dinosaurs.
Yeah. Sexually mature males
They're bright red.
become red. It's an interaction between the sex hormone and the light,
I see.
which create this red
So
pigment.
it's testosterone plus light turns you red.
That's right. These are adult birds. This is mature body size. They will never be bigger than this. When I started to cross birds like these ones
With the ones
with the ones that we saw. Well, they try to flap. They still know how to flap.
they're rather sweet. Having successfully bred small featherless chickens, Dr. Kahana wanted to see if he could create a big commercial-sized bird.
That was the challenge, and indeed we managed to do it, as you can see here.
He's huge.
This is an adult male.
huge.
This male is identical in body size to the males that we saw over there in the other house, which have full feathers. The only thing that we changed is that we took advantage of this gene, the scaleless gene, that eliminates or avoids the development of the feathers. And by doing this, we allowed these birds to grow nicely and comfortably in hot conditions.
These chickens are the result of Dr. Kahana's selective breeding program. And after 6 generations of mating the chickens with the featherless genes, this is what we've ended up with. I can imagine most people's reactions at seeing these chickens is one of revulsion. But if you were a chicken in 100-degree heat, you wouldn't want feathers, believe me. And anyway, they're not the first animal bred to have their natural covering removed. Look at pigs. Wild boar are furry. And even we humans were once apes, entirely covered in hair. So perhaps they're not as weird as they first seem. What is the future of these chickens? Are we going to see them in our supermarkets soon?
Hopefully in the supermarkets in the tropical countries, in Nigeria, in Indonesia, where it's very hot. For these farmers, it's easier and more efficient because there's no need...
You don't have to pluck them.
That's right. There's no need to pluck them. The proportion of meat on these birds is higher.
So featherless chickens in the tropics, they grow faster than a bird with feathers because they don't get held up by the fact they're getting too hot. They're healthier. They cost less because you don't have expensive housing. It sounds fantastic.
That's right.
Good for the person, good for the bird.
Selective breeding is just the first tool in our quest to control the natural world. But it still takes generations to accomplish and is quite imprecise. The big breakthrough really came when scientists could identify individual genes. Not only that, but they developed the technology to extract them.
One of the great discoveries of the last 20 years is that you can move a gene from one species into another entirely different one, which gives us almost limitless possibilities.
That's right. On our farm, it's time to enter the world of transgenics and genetic modification. It's time to enter the rabbit hutch. The man in charge of transgenics is Dr. Houdebine. In the hutch, he's created dozens of transgenic rabbits.
So what does it mean, transgenic rabbits?
If you look at the word transgene, this means that a gene was transferred, a foreign gene was transferred to the animal.
So which gene have they got?
Well, it comes from a jellyfish from Pacific Ocean.
In case you missed that, Dr. Houdebine has successfully used transgenics to insert a jellyfish gene into a rabbit.
And what does the gene do?
The gene gives a green color to the jellyfish and then green color to the rabbits.
So the rabbits glow green in the dark?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I see?
Oh, sure.
Charged up with blue ultraviolet light and viewed through special glasses, the skin and the eyes of these rabbits glow green, just like a jellyfish.
Look.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
extremely green.
So the
That's
difference
amazing.
is great because they have red eyes
Yes.
in normal light and green with this light.
It looks quite peculiar, I must say.
This is no trick of the light. These rabbits' eyes and skin really do glow green. It's amazing what he's done.
This is transgenics in action. Scientists have managed to isolate a tiny bit of jellyfish DNA that makes them fluoresce, known as the GFP gene. Dr. Houdebine has simply taken that gene and inserted it into bacteria. As the bacteria reproduce, the gene is multiplied. And then these genes are injected into the fertilized egg of a rabbit. Dr. Houdebine then places the egg into the mother. As the egg grows to form the rabbit embryo, it copies the fluorescing gene into every cell. 31 days later, you've got fluorescent bunnies.
You may be surprised to hear that Dr. Houdebine does all this with jellyfish genes he orders off the internet.
Because I find it still impressive. You know, that tube, very small, and you
Tiny.
have a very, very tiny drop.
Yes.
And this is the gene itself that was injected in these animals. And with that small quantity that you can see,
Which
there,
is
you
absolutely
you
tiny.
can micro-inject hundreds of embryos.
Dr. Houdebine has a fresh litter for me to take a look at.
If we want to look and see them green, take the spectacle and
The effect of the GFP gene is even more pronounced in the newly born babies.
Can I hold one?
oh, sure.
Oh, yes. Oh, wow.
Most of them are green, but one or two of them are not green because the father was green, but not the mother. So statistically, half of them are green, and the second half is not.
But why on earth, I hear you say, make animals that glow in the dark? Well, these rabbits are being bred to help medical researchers across the world track the movement of cells. The jellyfish genes are being used like a fluorescent marker pen. By tagging certain cells with the glowing jellyfish genes, scientists can work out which cells go where after an organ transplant. The technology is helping us find treatments for problems like blindness and bone disease.
I think it's amazing that you can take a gene from a jellyfish and put it into a bacteria or a mushroom or a rabbit, and it works. It does the same thing it did in the jellyfish. And jellyfish and rabbits have been separated for more than 600 million years, and yet the jellyfish gene still works. I think that's incredible.
So transgenics can be useful for medical research. But what happens when it hits your dinner table? For our next stop, let's head to the fish farm to meet the genetically modified fish, our very own super salmon. In the fish tanks on our farm, Joe McGonigal is using transgenics to create a salmon that grows extra fast for your dining pleasure.
So down here in this tank, we have transgenic fish that are a year old. During this period of their lives, they're growing about 4 to 6 times faster than standard salmon grow. We can take this out and we can compare it with a standard non-transgenic salmon, and you can take a look and see how they compare, both for size and for condition.
After just 1 year's growth, Joe's salmon are 4 times larger than non-GM salmon of the same age.
Well, what we have are 2 same-age fish. The larger one, as you can see, is the transgenic that we've just taken out of the tank. These fish are virtually identical, except for one has a transgene. It grows faster during this first year of life.
Traditionally, a salmon only grows in warm water. But as soon as the water gets cold in winter, the gene controlling the salmon's growth switches off, and the fish stops growing. Not anymore. Joe takes the genetic switch which controls growth from another species of fish that grows in cold water. He inserts that into the salmon egg. The presence of this genetic switch means the new salmon now grows all year round, whatever the water temperature.
Joe really does seem to love his fish.
As you can see here, these are beautiful fish. There's virtually nothing wrong with them in any way. They're streamlined, they're torpedo-shaped. There is virtually no deformity. They look exactly like conventional fish. This is not like a bodybuilder situation or people using steroids in order to bulk up. These fish are essentially producing what they need internally under their own genetic control.
Joe sees himself as a farmer of the future. He really seems to believe that using transgenics to create these super salmon could make salmon farming less damaging to the environment and protect the few remaining stocks of wild salmon.
You can reduce the environmental footprint of conventional salmon farming in a couple of ways. One is that these fish are more efficient at feed conversion. They gain about 30% more weight per gram of food they eat compared to conventional salmon, and as a result they also produce about 30% less waste. That waste would otherwise end up in the water column or on the bottom of the ocean.
In each of these trays, Joe's got enough eggs to grow super salmon on an industrial scale.
Each one of these contains about 10,000 eggs, and there's something in the neighborhood of 160 of them. Each one is a unique family, and each one can be bred forward into the future.
But what on earth would happen if one of these monster salmon escaped and swam off to breed with ordinary fish?
The concerns that the transgene is out there and there's no calling it back, you've changed the world forever. Now, in point of fact, the fish are sterile. They can't breed at all. There's no possibility of a transgene that exists in an Atlantic salmon escaping from the species.
So because the salmon are sterile, Joe's certain there's no danger of the gene getting out and causing chaos.
Novelists get paid for imagining those kinds of things. Fish breeders get paid for producing a fish that can provide food into the future without the problems of over-harvesting stocks that will frankly disappear if we keep hitting them.
Here on the farm, super salmon aren't the only genetically modified animals that could help save the environment. For our next appointment, we're heading to the pigsty to meet some creatures who could help us out of a sticky situation.
I like bacon as much as the next person. But the amount of pork we eat is causing serious problems. Last year, we killed more than 2 billion pigs. And these creatures provide more dietary protein, more cheaply, to more people than any other animal. But all this consumption comes at a cost.
Animal agriculture is a major consumer of the natural environment. That is, the impacts on the atmosphere, upon water utilization, and in particular, pig agriculture or hog agriculture produces copious amounts of manure.
Manure, it's a natural product, but on an industrial scale, it's a serious environmental pollutant. And poo from pigs is particularly toxic.
Pig manure has a very high level of phosphorus within it from normal diets through normal pigs. And that phosphorus usually is more than is required by crops produced on land fertilized with pig manure.
Pig manure is packed with phosphorus because pigs simply can't digest it. And this excess is causing some serious damage. It runs off into the water supply, causing the overgrowth of algae and killing fish. It seems an impossible problem of biology, but John Phillips has found a way to fix it.
A very simple and effective solution to the environmental problems caused by high phosphorus pig manure found right behind these doors.
To tackle the problem, John has created something he calls the EnviroPig. This animal looks normal, but it's anything but.
These pigs are unlike any other pigs in the world. They're different because they carry a very special gene that allows them to digest all of the phosphorus in their diet. The gene is constructed in the laboratory that we use.
The remarkable thing about the EnviroPigs is that they carry a man-made gene, which John has created from scratch.
One part comes from E. coli bacteria, which produces an enzyme that can break down phosphorus. And the other comes from a mouse, which produces a genetic switch that allows this special enzyme to be made in saliva. These two bits of DNA were combined to form a new compound gene, which was then inserted into a fertilized pig egg. Now every time John's pigs eat and produce saliva, they also make the phosphorus-busting enzyme, helping to make their poo more environmentally friendly.
The aim, ultimately, we think, is that the global environment would be best served if every pig could digest all of its organic phosphorus in its diet the way these pigs do.
So John wants every pig in the world to be an EnviroPig. I think it's an idea with merit, but he's encountered a lot of obstacles.
There are many people out in the community that do have concerns about transgenic changes in animals, and some of these people have gone about intentionally frightening the public about this technology. So we have an uphill battle in terms of people's perceptions. This is an effective way of dealing with a serious environmental problem. It's simple, it can be propagated very rapidly. Any other technology cannot touch this in terms of the rapidity of its application on the farm or the extent of the change that can occur as a result of the technology. Nothing comes close to this.
All over the farm, scientists are discovering that genetic modification is an immensely powerful tool. But it's also a controversial one. Olivia Judson is convinced that we shouldn't be afraid of it.
I personally would much rather eat an organism that has been genetically modified to grow fast than one that has been injected with a lot of hormones to grow fast. I certainly would have no objection to eating an animal that has been genetically modified. I mean, what is a gene? It's an instruction to make a protein. It's not anything mystical.
I think to a lot of people it probably is something mystical.
But it's not. I mean, there's nothing mystical about a gene. We know what it is, we can describe it, we can build them. There is nothing mysterious, and all it does is contain the instruction for making a protein. You know, you add one, you take one away, so what?
But having understood how it works, to then start changing it and meddling with it, is another step, isn't it?
Well, we already have. I mean, nothing in this countryside, in this landscape, is natural. It's been modified by us. We haven't done it precisely, but we certainly have altered which sheep are growing, which grass is growing. We just don't have such a thing as a natural landscape in most of the world. I mean, it's just complete, you know, it's a fantasy. We've created it.
What Giles and so many other people don't seem to appreciate is that genetic engineering is one of the most highly regulated technologies in the world. It's so highly regulated that even when GM could really help save lives, we're not allowed to use it. Absurdly, this greenhouse is classed as a biohazard containment facility, the sort of thing where you'd keep a sample from Mars. To stop what some people call genetic pollution, cross-pollination, none of these plants are allowed into the open air for a moment. But inside are simply new strains of the crops billions of people eat every day. What's more, every cutting is meticulously catalogued and recorded. The point is, scientists working here have been trying to cure a condition that kills 2.5 million people a year. Vitamin A deficiency. It's a huge problem. Half the world population gets almost all their nutrition from rice. But unfortunately, rice doesn't have in it a set of simple chemicals called carotenoids. That's the stuff that gives colour to vegetables like carrots and peppers. Our bodies use carotenoids from vegetables to make vitamin A. And if you don't get enough vitamin A, you have real problems.
Vitamin A deficiency suppresses the immune system, but before it does that, it makes individuals blind. Most of the children who are affected are less than 5. Most of them die within 2 years of becoming blind. People suffering from vitamin A deficiency die from diseases which healthy people can survive. So vitamin A deficiency kills 2.5 million people a year. That's equivalent to a 9/11 every 12 hours, to a tsunami every month, to 250 people dying during the course of a 1-hour television program.
So the scientists set to work to see if they could manage to make rice high in vitamin A by persuading it to produce the carotenoids. Their science was pioneering. They identified not 1 or 2, but 3 genes. 2 from the daffodil and 1 from a bacteria, which they thought would help produce carotenoids. They then tried to insert all 3 of these into rice DNA. In 1999, after years of trial and error, they finally managed to create rice that produced beta-carotene. They could tell that this was being produced because the genetically engineered rice was colored yellow. They christened it golden rice.
That was amazing science. It still is amazing science. At the time, no other genetically modified plant had more than 1 gene expressing. They put 3 in and turned on a pathway.
It's been a long road to perfect their plants. But now, a bowl of golden rice can provide an individual with enough vitamin A to meet their daily needs. But absurdly, golden rice is still locked in greenhouses like this. Dr. Adrian Duboc finds this completely frustrating, and I can understand why.
Genes occur in all the food we eat. They occur in all organisms. Biology is a most powerful tool, and there's nothing to be frightened of in this technology. The history shows it's extremely safe. It's the most regulated technology of any technology that's ever been introduced. So how can rich people in Europe stand in the way of choice for poor people in the developing world, especially when standing in the way of that choice kills them?
Golden rice sums up what I find so frustrating. There may be issues about who exploits this technology, and there have been worries about cross-pollination. But the basic underlying fear remains irrational. The science at the heart of this is so effective. And the plant scientists who've made the breakthroughs are trying to make the world a better place.
Once scientists have gone to the trouble of improving on evolution, either through GM or traditional breeding, the next question is how to preserve their success. And now we get to the most extraordinary technique scientists are using on our farm. Cloning. You've probably heard of Dolly the sheep, but what you may not know is that since then, scientists have created whole herds of cloned cows, pigs, and flocks of sheep. For our next stop, we're going to meet the prize-winning herd of longhorn cattle, an entire paddock of clones.
The adult cows are surrogate mothers, and all of their calves are clones. In this pen, I have clones of 5 different animals.
When you say surrogate mothers, did they carry the eggs?
They carried the embryos the complete gestation and gave birth to these calves. Everything is as it would be
if they were normal.
Weren't, right. Well, if they weren't cloned. So.
You don't like to use the word.
Well, you know, looking there, you can't say that they're abnormal.
No, they look very healthy,
know.
and
yes.
Although they're beautiful and lovely, and I always love seeing cows, and particularly small ones, I'm slightly disappointed that they're not all identical.
You know, cloning, you can't guarantee that they're going to look identical. You're just guaranteeing that the genetics are identical. That's the purpose of cloning, is to provide the exact genetic.
I kind of expected them all to be running along together in rows, you know, like finishing at the same time in a race.
Yes,
like a mirror image of the same cow over and over. So it's not quite like that.
No, it's not. You know, like I said, they'll act similar, but they don't know they're a clone, and each calf has its own personality.
So just how do you create a clone? Expert cloner Earl Huang is keen to show Olivia just how it's done.
It's still kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can get it. Today we're working with bovine.
So it's a cow egg?
Yes. These eggs come from a slaughterhouse, and what I'm basically doing is taking out all the DNA and creating a blank for the actual cloning process to begin.
So in order to clone, you need an empty egg.
Exactly.
And so you're plunging this glass pipette into the egg and just suctioning out the DNA.
Yes.
It's an extremely delicate operation.
It is. You have to have good hand-eye coordination and have to be gentle with the eggs. You don't want to kill them.
And that's what's amazing about cloning. It doesn't require particularly complicated chemistry, just a microscope, a very sharp glass needle, and incredibly steady hands.
And I'll go in with the pipette.
And draw it up like juices from a turkey. I have to say, it's fascinating to see it.
Next, Earl has to hoover up the cells containing the DNA of the animal he wants to clone.
These are cells grown from the skin of the animal that we want to clone.
Exactly.
It amazes me that you can put a cell from a grown-up animal into an empty egg and something happens.
Well, the cell basically contains the whole genetic makeup of that animal.
You now insert the DNA of the animal you want to clone into the empty egg. One cell into each egg.
You can see there's a little pocket of space.
What I'll do is puncture the egg and just carefully deposit the cell in there.
Last of all, you need to wake up the egg containing the new DNA. All it takes is a spark of electricity.
Earl may make it look easy, but in fact it's immensely difficult to pull off in practice. Dolly the sheep was the only survivor of 300 attempts. But if you can master it, the rewards are huge, because once you've found your perfect animal, you can create a clone and repeat it time after time, like a biological photocopier. And it's not only farmers who have their eye on this technology. For our next appointment, let's head to the stables to meet a world-famous sporting duo who have just made scientific history.
Hi.
We're Charmaine then.
Hi.
And
this is Scamper.
So what's so special about this horse?
He's a 10-time world champion barrel racing horse, and he won those 10 championships consecutively.
And what is barrel racing exactly?
Barrel racing is a timed event around 3 barrels in a cloverleaf pattern. It's timed.
So the barrels are in the ground?
The barrels are 50-gallon drums. There's 3 of them set in a cloverleaf pattern. And it's timed electronically right into the 100th of a second.
And when you ride round and round and round?
As fast as you can.
It's always you riding him?
I was the only one who rode him. Scamper was a bronc when he was young. And
a bronc?
He bucked.
Wild,
he bucked a lot of people off. There's no telling what kind of abuse he had, being that he was so mean. He went through 3 or 4 sale yards. Nobody wanted him.
So Scamper had a troubled childhood, but just when everyone else had given up on him, Charmaine came to his rescue. It's like Seabiscuit. It's a
Yeah.
proper romance.
Yeah, and I was a little 11-year-old girl that just was horse crazy, and he met me for the first time, and we just basically fell in love. It was a match made in heaven, love at first sight. Scamper made me who I was and what I was, and he did. You know, I lived every day of my life with him for 10 years while I was winning a world championship, never left him.
But all good things come to an end. So when did Scamper stop racing?
He's been retired for around 10 years now.
So when he was retired, did you carry on racing on different horses?
Yes.
And they weren't as good?
Oh, no.
What was it they didn't have, the other horses?
They didn't have whatever Scamper was made of.
Scamper's a world-famous horse, and in theory, his genetics, basically his sperm, are worth a fortune. But in fact, it's more complicated than that. And Scamper never had any children?
No, he's a gelding.
Oh, poor fellow. And when you met him, he was already a gelding?
He was already a gelding.
So what do you do when you've got $1 million racehorse and no way to reproduce him? Well, here on the farm, there's an obvious solution.
So you can't have children, so you've decided to clone him?
We decided to clone him so we could get that same genetics.
How did it come about? How did they clone Scamper? They took cells from him, or...?
Yeah, they took a biopsy, just a little small amount of tissue from Scamper, and of course we gene banked him, and then when they had the science to...
You gene banked him before they had the science?
Yes.
And then what, they gave you a call when they had the technology?
Yes, when they knew they had it right, they said, okay, we're ready to go.
Scamper's little clone is named Clayton, and the champion is about to meet his younger self.
There's Clayton.
Oh. Well, he looks pretty normal, but this is crazy stuff, and I reckon it must be even weirder for Scamper. Have they met many times before?
This is the second time they've met. And Scamper's not real fond of Clayton. He likes his mama.
Really?
Yes, so he's protecting the mama from the baby.
Is he? Is that that's a man thing?
That's a Scamper thing.
Is this chopping mouth, is that a threat?
Yes.
So Scamper doesn't think much of his clone. But what about Charmaine? You see similarities between the two already.
He carries himself the same. He has the same arch in his neck. He's just very confident. The first time I saw him, I just couldn't take my eyes off of him. It just makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up to think that this is how Scamper was when he was a baby, and it's real emotional.
He doesn't look identical. I mean, maybe is that because he's young? Is that what Scamper looked like when he was a kid?
I didn't see Scamper when he was a baby, but conformation-wise, the shoulder, the hips, everything looks the same. From what I understand, the white migrates in the womb, so that has nothing to do with the DNA.
Clayton's been created to do what Scamper can't, produce sperm, which will then be sold to other breeders. But what if it was Scamper's tough childhood, more than his DNA, that took him to the top?
We obviously don't know how much of his past life made him try as hard as what he did. Kind of like the kids that grow up in a bad part of town and they knew they had to overcome a lot. Kind of the same thing.
I guess only time will tell. But while Charmaine is delighted about Clayton's arrival, not everyone is thrilled that he's here.
We've had a few negative comments.
Such as?
I think that we're playing God. And now that we've created Clayton, now what if they clone Osama bin Laden?
That's what they said?
Yes.
God, that would be scary. But he wouldn't be much good at barrel racing, would he, Osama? In spite of the skeptics, Charmaine's certain she's done the right thing.
I think the people who really don't understand the science behind it may oppose it, but the reasons I did it were, yeah, I love Scamper, but I have a passion for great horses and their ability. And I've struggled with other horses past him that had so many physical problems from competing that it's hard to get past all that. And if we can start breeding some horses that stayed as sound as him, then I think we're doing a real noble thing.
So cloning is an irresistibly powerful tool for some breeders. And it's been around a lot longer than you might think.
Cloning, to a lot of people, I think, suggests a Xerox copy.
It's exactly what it suggests to me. Yeah.
And that's obviously not what it is. I mean, technically speaking, an identical twin is a clone. Apples, for example, are all clones. Almost all fruit is made by grafting, so as to avoid the genetic lottery.
Well, every apple there's no unique apples.
Well, we could grow them from seed, but then they'd taste horrible and would be useful only for making cider.
In what sense is it a clone?
Apples are grown by grafting, so that you don't have to take the risk of sex. Sex breaks up good gene combinations. The offspring of an apple that tastes good often don't taste very good, because the genes that made your apple taste very good have been shuffled up.
In that case, let's accept the fact that the cloning of an apple is not especially scary, is it? That's not the thing that worries people. It's cloning people. It's cloning cattle for eating that scares people.
Why?
We don't know what the long-term dangers are likely to be. Is the species not strengthened by constant cross-fertilization? Are we not storing up some time bomb?
We might have a problem if every cow on the planet was a clone, but we're not. I mean, that's not what's going to happen.
Would you eat a clone?
Yes.
Really?
Absolutely. Would you?
I would eat applesauce made from a cloned apple with a normal pig, but I wouldn't eat a cloned pig.
So Giles wouldn't eat a clone, but as his tour around the farm ends, are there any of the animals on our farm he would be prepared to give the taste test to?
They don't look very different dead than alive, do they? I mean, they're still all muscle. There's almost no difference between the animal with the skin on and the skin off.
You're quite right. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you would say, if you didn't know that this had been selectively bred over 100 years to get to this stage, and that it was just an animal randomly killed, and you would say that animal must have had a very strenuous life. I mean, why has this animal got all these muscles? It must be for a reason.
But then the meat wouldn't be very good, because that meat would be very tough, you see? So the beauty of the Belgian Blue is that because of that double muscle, all the food is converted into muscle, but these muscles remain very tender, you see?
Now for the moment of truth. Has all the effort been worthwhile? What will this ultra-lean, double-muscled meat actually taste of? That is very, very lean. No fat at all. So this double-muscled Belgian Blue steak is not genetically modified. It's been specifically selected over generations, 30 or 40 years. It's all muscle, there's no fat. Generally speaking, English people like me, I generally think that you need fat on a steak to give it the flavour. That's where the interest lies. But can they really taste of anything at all? I'm about to find out. Thank you very much. Merci. Doesn't taste of anything at all. Oh, very chewy. It's a bit like biting your tongue. I don't know why you put all that time and energy into this. Tastes like horse.
So the Belgian Blues aren't to everyone's taste. But as our tour around the farm comes to a close, Olivia has one last surprise up her sleeve. And it's one of the most revolutionary concepts we've encountered. You will never have seen this before.
One possible use of genetic technology is to just get rid of the animal altogether and just grow steaks in vats. I know this looks a bit unappetizing.
Oh, no.
It's
Depends what it is.
Well, it's a prototype steak in a vat.
This is meat grown in a Petri dish, a burger from mince that has never been part of a cow or bull. It opens up a world where no animals need live or die to feed you.
It's grown from stem cells.
It's grown from stem cells?
Not human stem cells. Cow stem cells.
Right.
This prototype non-animal burger may look slightly odd, but you could just be looking at the future of food.
You could eventually just grow a hamburger in a vat or grow a large piece of breast meat in a vat and get rid of the animal altogether. And so if you're worried about the ethical treatment of animals, you might then want to start eating meat again.
Surely you couldn't make one of these tasty. Probably the life of the animal is what makes the thing tasty, isn't it? I mean...
I'll have to do the experiment.
Next time on Animal Farm, we look at how biotechnology is changing the world of medicine. We meet the cows that are milked for their blood, the sheep with humanized organs, and the mice who can regenerate themselves.
We have gone to all this trouble to prepare this food, so might as well eat it. Do you want to start with the? Do you want to carve the super salmon?
Well, cheers. To genetic modification.
Said Mother Nature.